Last night's Caerphilly by-election was not a wobble, it was a political rewiring. Plaid Cymru won decisively on a record by-election turnout for the Welsh Assembly, just above 50%, with 47% of the vote. Reform UK surged as second on roughly 36%, Labour fell on third at 11%, the steepest collapse they've ever recorded in a Welsh by-election. And those are not mood swings, they are structural signals the Conservative Party barely figured. When voters are offered a credible alternative rooted in place and community, reform is beatable. When they are offered only managerialism and drift, reform thrives. Caerphilly showed both truths at once. Reform did very well, up from a rounding error in 2021 to a full-blooded second place, powered by anti-incumbent energy, anger at service failure and a simple message of rupture. Reform still lost to a localist long-grounded Plaid Cymru campaign with a well-known candidate and a clear pitch on services, culture and respect. Tactical anti-reform voting was real. That is the ceiling lesson. Caerphilly has backed Labour under every leader from Attlee to Corbyn. Not anymore. Professor John Curtis called it severe trouble for Labour in Wales, and he's right, because this was not a protest by a sleepy electorate. It was a high salience choice with unusually strong youth participation, a cohort less drawn to reform and more open to Plaid Cymru's offer. At Westminster, Number 10 tacitly conceded the point, admitting voters are disappointed with the pace of change. That is not a line, it's an indictment. 3 failures converged. The NHS waits, transport and the visible decline are blamed on Labour locally and nationally. Management language without material improvement invites punishment. A party that once spoke fluently about Wales now often sounds outsourced to London. Plaid Cymru sounded Welsh, Reform sounded angry, Labour sounded absent. The Conservatives didn't sound at all. The Plaid Cymru framed the choice as Plaid or Reform. Labour let that frame stand, then discovered it was the third option. Under Kemi Badenoch, the Conservatives asked for a mandate that they haven't earned. Caerphilly voters didn't queue to reward 14 years of drift. The Tory brand in Wales is anemic, and the anti-reform tactical squeeze can hit them too. Last night offered no rescue narrative. And, of course, Kemi Badenoch wouldn't know how to provide one. Reform can top polls, dominate the conversation, and then be stopped at the point of power if a single well-known rival offers a rooted alternative and if anti-reform voters coordinate. That is what happened in Caerphilly. But the surge to 36% is still a serious platform for the Welsh Assembly election. The party learned how to mobilise, data target and frame a local contest as a referendum on change. Don't mistake a hard ceiling for a glass one. Next May matters more because the rules change. Wales moves from 60 to 96% elected by closed list proportional representation across the 16 six-member constituencies. That system rewards breadth over spikes. It punishes parties that cannot reach beyond their echo chambers. It also makes permanent tactical pacts less necessary, since proportionality does some of that work automatically. On these rules, Plaid and Reform are both viable. Labour can still lead, but only if it looks and sounds like Wales again and fixes something people can touch. If Plaid keeps presenting itself as competent local patriots and Reform keeps presenting itself as the battering ram, Labour risks being squeezed from both sides under PR. Curtis's warning was not hyperbole, it was maths. So, as for how we project beyond this, well, you just have to look up to Scotland, and the SNP could now do astonishingly well. That's not a fanciful thought. Holyrood uses proportional representation. The field is fractured. Late 2025 polling has the SNP generally ahead in both constituency and list voting, with Labour competitive but not dominant, and Reform a spoiler, not a government maker. If anti-reform coordination repeats and if Labour continues to leak definition, the SNP benefits from simple clarity, competent national interest plus stability. None of that guarantees a majority, but it does put the SNP in first place contention. And the two-party duopoly is clearly cracking, where voters are offered a particular alternative with real roots. In Wales, that was Plaid Cymru. In parts of England, it's been the Greens or the Lib Dems. Where the contest is framed as Starmer versus Farage, Reform thrives. Where it's framed as community competence versus imported culture war, reform hits a wall. Caerphilly proved both propositions in one night. So what would Labour have to do in order to survive, in order to recover? It would have to do things fairly fast. It would have to pick 2 service wins and deliver visibly before May, stop promising system reform, fill potholes, cut a meaningful NHS queue segment, publish dates. Speak Welsh politics in a Welsh register, let Welsh Labour lead, not echo London, stop shadowboxing reform on terrain that makes reform stronger. Fight on competence, fairness and dignity, not on punitive theatre. Success will attract scrutiny that Plaid Cymru has long avoided. They needed costed plans on health, staffing and buses, not just grievance about funding formulas. If they stay disciplined and relentlessly local, their ceiling rises. Reform, however, cannot always be the only protest on the ballot. Where a known respectable local brand exists, negative coalition voting will mobilise. To break through under PR, reform needs professional candidates, clean vetting and a policy suite that reaches beyond anger to credible improvement in services. Otherwise, 30-something becomes a cap, not a launch pad. So, yes, when there is something else to vote for, reform can be stopped. Reform still did very well. Labour and the Conservatives are not collecting gratitude cheques. Wales just showed how quickly power can move when voters are offered a serious alternative. I think Scotland will watch that lesson, and so will the Lib Dems, and next May Scotland will apply it, and I think the Lib Dems will as well. The Lib Dems and the SNP are likely to be the main beneficiaries of the anti-reform vote. It's not going to go to the Conservatives, is it? And it's certainly not going to go to the present government.